Haruki and Ren, they were the top of their class, separated only by the decimal point in their average. Their rivalry wasn't loud. It was a silent, intense energy that pulsed through every class, every test score, every whispered debate on historical accuracy. But unlike Ren, who seemed carved from logic and ambition, Haruki had a soft, secret weakness. His small, bright blue parakeet, Zephyr. Zephyr was the only one who didn't care about test scores or honor rolls. He just whistled. One Tuesday morning, Haruki woke up and Zephyr did not. There was no gentle chirp, no flutter of wings against the cage bars, just a sudden, echoing silence where a tiny, bright life used to be. The silence was absolute. The shock wasn't a sudden, loud crack. It was a slow, deliberate freezing. Haruki went to school, but a thick, invisible wall went up around him. He didn't speak. He didn't react. He didn't even see Ren's new, perfect score on the calculus quiz. Ren noticed. Of course she did. Haruki had missed a class assignment, something he hadn't done since elementary school. He was usually a fire, and now he was a shadow. This was a deviation from the expected pattern, and Ren hated deviation. She tried to engage him in their usual intellectual sparring, tossing out a complex physics problem during lunch. "Haruki, what's the optimal trajectory for a particle in this field?" she challenged. His only answer was silence, a complete void. Ren had never seen him defeated. He wasn't even fighting. He was simply gone. It was more disturbing than any tie score, and it made her own small victory feel completely hollow. Ren, who analyzed data for a living, decided to analyze him. She asked a few hushed questions around the edges of the class. She learned about Zephyr, the sudden death, the unsaid goodbye, a flicker of something other than competition, sparked behind her eyes. The next day, Ren didn't talk about geometry or history. As Haruki gathered his things to leave, she simply walked up to his desk, placed a small dark object on it, and walked away without a word. Haruki stared at the object, a dark, smooth, beautifully polished river stone. He picked it up. It was cold and heavy, a small anchor in the chaotic emptiness. Tucked beneath it was a note with a single handwritten word, grief. Haruki's first tear in days finally slipped free. Haruki kept the stone. It sat on his nightstand, cool and solid next to Zephyr's empty cage. It wasn't a replacement for the bird, but a heavy, silent acknowledgement. It was the first honest thing anyone had given him since Tuesday. Ren didn't bring it up. The next day, she simply sat at her desk, working. But her silence was different now. It was a structured, patient silence, like a blank page waiting for him to write the next chapter. Then, one afternoon in the library, a thick book was slid onto his study table, a dense textbook on ornithology. It was open to a chapter titled Avian Life Cycle and the 5 Stages of Loss. Haruki looked up. Ren was already gone. He didn't read the chapter on loss. Instead, he went straight to parakeet intelligence and communication patterns. It was illogical, a detour from his prescribed morning, and he knew it was exactly the kind of intellectual escape Ren had predicted. The subtle data drops continued. A laminated article on brain chemistry during grief slipped inside his locker. A complex, abstract fractal image printed and left under his pencil case. They were problems to solve, not emotions to feel. Haruki started responding in kind. He wouldn't talk, but he would leave his notes on the textbook page Ren had not opened. He'd leave a cryptic mathematical sequence in the margins of the articles she left. It was a new language only they spoke. One Saturday, Haruki found himself at the city's largest greenhouse, a humid glass dome that smelled of earth and rain. He wasn't sure why he was there, only that he couldn't stand the silence of his room anymore. He heard a sharp, familiar tap, tap, tap. Ren was there too, in the farthest corner, kneeling by a planter box, meticulously charting the growth rate of an obscure moss variety with a digital clipboard. This wasn't the competitive Ren of the classroom. This was Ren the observer, the analyst, lost in the delicate, slow-motion struggle of nature. She didn't see him. He watched her for a long moment, seeing her for the first time outside of the rival category. Haruki finally walked over, his shadow falling across her clipboard. Ren looked up, her analytical composure faltering for a split second. Haruki picked up a fallen, dried seed pod from the dirt. He held it out to her. It was perfectly intact, ready to be planted, but utterly empty inside. It was Zephyr's silence, packaged in an organic shell. He finally spoke, his voice rough from disuse. "The optimal trajectory is towards new growth," he said. Ren took the seed pod. She didn't analyze his statement. She simply tucked the empty shell into a small, clean space on her clipboard, right next to the data for the moss. "I'll factor it into the next iteration," she replied. Their rivalry had officially rebooted. Back in class, their competition was fiercer, yet quieter. Haruki found his focus sharpened by the need to anticipate Ren's next move. He started calling it a cooperative antagonism, a phrase he knew would make her secretly categorize him as eccentric yet accurate. One afternoon, Ren left a stack of meticulously categorized research on the life cycle of a rare South American fern. On top, Haruki placed a hand-drawn diagram showing the structural weaknesses in the data's primary source. It was collaboration disguised as sabotage. Haruki was thriving academically. He had outsourced his grief to his intellect and, indirectly, to Ren. But the river stone still sat on his nightstand. One night, he picked it up, expecting to feel solid logic, and instead felt a sudden, crushing emptiness. The data had reached its limit. The next day, Ren didn't leave an article. She left a single, blank piece of paper with a perfectly centered dot. Below it, only two symbols, E_0 and a question mark. Initial state, 0 energy. What now? It was the simplest, hardest data drop yet. Haruki stared at the paper. It wasn't about data or equations. Ren wasn't trying to fix him with facts. She was giving him a framework to accept the unsolvable. She hadn't provided a replacement for Zephyr. She had simply stayed until the silence was bearable. After class, he followed her to the courtyard. "The optimal trajectory is towards new growth," he repeated, holding up the stone. "But I miss the way he used to tilt his head when I talked to him. I miss his noise." The structured facade finally cracked. Ren didn't look away. She didn't offer a philosophical quote or a scientific explanation. She simply nodded once, a definitive, acknowledging motion. "The probability of residual emotional attachment remains at 100%, she stated quietly. "It is statistically valid." Later, Haruki walked back to the greenhouse. He dug a small hole in the rich, dark soil near the planter where they had met. He placed the riverstone inside, covering it up. It was no longer a symbol of death's finality, but a seed of remembrance rooted in new earth. The rivalry never ended. It simply evolved into something stronger, more honest, and fundamentally constructive. They became an efficient two-person system, the conceptual architect and the data analyst, competing against the world's complexities together. Haruki still missed Zephyr, but now, when he looked at the empty cage, he saw the whole landscape, the quiet rival, the perfect math, the green growth. He had lost a pet, but he had gained a mirror, a catalyst, and the unexpected certainty that the one who stayed always changed the equation.